The box that made me a Dungeon Master. The 1991 new Easy to Master Dungeons & Dragons game. There are certain Dungeon & Dragon products that you remember because they were great games. There are others you remember because of when you got them. And then there are a handful that actually changed the direction of your life. For me, this is one of those. The 1991 new Easy to Master Dungeons & Dragons game. Or as most of us call it today, the Black Box. And unlike some of the other classic Dungeons & Dragons sets that I've talked about, I don't have to imagine what it would have been like to learn Dungeons & Dragons from this thing. Because this is the box that I cut my teeth on as a Dungeon Master. This is where it started. So today, we're going to open this thing up, look at what TSR gave you for your money back in 1991, talk about where this particular version of D&D fits into the history of the game. And I'm going to tell you why, more than 30 years later, I still think this was one of the better introductions to dungeon mastering TSR ever produced. So, grab your dice, pull up a chair, and let's go back to 1991. Now, by 1991, Dungeons & Dragons had already been through several different introductory versions. You had the Holmes Basic set, then Mauvais, then of course Frank Metzer's famous Red Box, the very beginning of the BECMI system. And if you've watched my previous video on the Red Box, you already know how much respect I have for what Metzer accomplished. The Red Box did something extraordinary well. It taught you how to play Dungeons & Dragons. But by 1991, TSR was facing a totally different marketplace. AD&D 2nd edition was on the shelves. Computer games were becoming increasingly important. Board games were everywhere. And TSR still needed something that a kid could see sitting on a store shelf, take home, open up, and actually figure out how to play. So TSR went back to the idea of the introductory D&D box set. The result was product number 1077, the new Easy to Master Dungeons & Dragons game. It was designed principally by Troy Denning, with Timothy B. Brown also credited also credited with the product. And it took the basic D&D rules and repackaged them into something very different from the Red Box. Instead of stopping at 3rd level, this set carried characters from levels 1 through 5. And instead of simply handing a beginning dungeon master a rule book and saying, "Alright kid, read this," TSR tried something different. Something that, as a young dungeon master, worked for me. You see, I bought my first copy of this box at Comic Book Warehouse in Naples, Florida. And man, just saying that name takes me back. Because there are places in your childhood that disappear over the years, but in your memory, they're still there. You can remember walking through the door. You can remember what the shelves look like. You can remember seeing those game boxes. And somewhere in that store was this big black Dungeons & Dragons box with the Jeff Easley Red Dragon staring back at me. Man, I bought it. I took it home, and before long, my Saturday nights were changed forever. My Saturday nights became Dungeons & Dragon nights. So I gathered my friends around. Charlie, Alan, Aaron, Julie, and Yeah, one annoying kid's sister. That's right, I'm talking about you, Cindy. Oh boy, yeah. You know what you did. Oh man, the memories. See, every Saturday night we'd get together and play. And this just wasn't me sitting at the table as an experienced dungeon master looking back at a beginner product. I was the beginning dungeon master. I was figuring it out as we went along. We rolled dice. We argued about rules. We explored dungeons. We killed monsters. And boy, did the monsters kill us. And plans went completely off the rail. And somehow I had to figure out what happened next. In other words, I had to learn how to be the dungeon master. And we kept playing this version until the rules cyclopedia came along and opened the doors even wider. But this was the doorway. So let's actually open this thing up, because TSR packed quite a bit into this box. First, you've got the rule book. The set's rules takes characters from first level through fifth level and gave you the familiar basic classes of D&D. Fighter, cleric, magic user, thief, and then dwarf, elf, and halfling as their own classes. And if you're familiar with BACME or the Rules Cyclopedia, most of this is going to feel immediately familiar to you. But the important thing isn't necessarily what rules were in here. It's how they taught them. Because next we have what I think is the defining feature of this entire set. The Dungeon Card Learning Pack. 48 numbered cards. I mean, this right here was brilliant. The idea was reportedly inspired by the old SRA reading programs, where students worked progressively through individual learning cards. Instead of dumping the entire game into your lap at once, D&D was broken into manageable pieces. A card teaches you a concept. Then the game gives you a situation where you actually use this concept. Then you move forward, and for a kid trying to learn how to be a dungeon master, that's a pretty powerful teaching method, because there's an enormous difference between somebody explaining initiative to you and somebody explaining initiative and then immediately giving you a situation where you rolled it. I mean, you learn by doing, and that's exactly what I did. Which brings me to one of my favorite parts of this box. Escape from Zanzar's Dungeon. Now, the introductory adventure was divided into 4 sections. And instead of saying, here's a dungeon, good luck, it walked you through running the game. I mean, you were learning to play the game. I mean, not play the game. You were learning the rules while you were playing the game. You learned what the Dungeon Master does while you were actually dungeon mastering. And that's important, because one of the biggest obstacles to becoming a dungeon master isn't understanding, what armor class means. It's confidence. You're sitting there thinking, what happens if the players do something that isn't written down? What if I don't know the rule? What if I screw this up? And sooner or later, every dungeon master discovers the great secret. You will screw something up. Everybody does. But the game keeps going. And Zanzar's Dungeon helps get you comfortable enough behind the screen to discover that. I mean, look at this map. You also got a large color map of Zanzar's Dungeon. And remember, we're talking about a beginner product. All right? Having that physical map on the table immediately makes the game understandable. There's the room. There's the corridor. There's the door. There's your character. There's the monster. And suddenly, this strange game that somebody is trying to explain to you becomes something that you can see. And TSR leaned into that even further, because you also received 48 fold-up cardboard figures. These weren't expensive miniatures, and they didn't need to be. You folded them up, put them on the map, and now you had heroes and monsters standing in a dungeon. For somebody completely new to role-playing games, that visual element was enormously helpful. I mean, today, we are accustomed to starter sets including maps, tokens, pawns, miniatures, pre-generated characters, and all kinds of teaching aids. But this was 1991, and TSR was already recognizing that sometimes the easiest way to teach somebody what a role-playing game is to put the dungeon in front of them and let them start moving through it. And then you get the Dungeon Master screen. This wasn't just a screen. I mean, it also functioned as a folder for these teaching cards. Again, that's clever product design. Everything has a purpose. Everything is trying to make the game less intimidating for people sitting behind the screen. And of course, naturally, you've got the dice. Now, this isn't the original set that came with it, but you've got your D4, your D6, your 8, your 10-sided, 12-sided, and the mighty D20. Because you can't play Dungeons & Dragons without funny-shaped dice. Well, I mean, you probably can, but why would you want to? And then there was the poster. Unfortunately, this one that I bought off eBay didn't have the poster. But that poster, it featured the cover art, the box cover art. I mean, look at this. This is an amazing piece of artwork here. And that's something that I miss about the old box games. Posters, handouts, maps, cards, and counters. There was a sense that you were basically opening a treasure chest. You didn't just buy a rule book. You bought this box full of all these strange objects that you could spread across the table. And for a kid in 1991, that mattered. Now, here's where this particular set gets interesting historically, because the black box occupies a strange little place in Dungeons and Dragons history. It wasn't a completely new edition of D&D. It was basically, essentially, another presentation and revision of the basic D&D game. But instead of the Menser basic sets levels 1 through 3, the black box gave you levels 1 through 5. That gave a new group enough room to play for a while before needing something else. And TSR already had that something else, because 1991 gave us one of the greatest Dungeons and Dragons books ever published, the Rules Cyclopedia. The Dungeons and Dragons Rules Encyclopedia, compiled and developed by Aaron Alston, the Rules Cyclopedia brought together the major rules from the basic, expert, companion, and master portions of the earlier D&D line into one enormous hardcover reference. So look at those two products together. The black box says, never played Dungeons and Dragons before? Come here. We'll teach you. And the Rules Cyclopedia says, alright, you know what you're doing. Now, here's the rest of the world. And that's almost exactly how it worked for us. We started here. We would play Saturday after Saturday, and we learned. It became more confident as a... Sorry, I messed that up. I became more confident as a dungeon master, while the players learned their characters. And our games got bigger. Our adventures became more ambitious. And then the Rules Cyclopedia came along. And suddenly, it was like somebody had taken the training wheels off and handed us the keys to the kingdom. So, how does the new Easy to Master Dungeons & Dragons game hold up today? As a rules reference? I mean, there are better options. I mean, the Rules Cyclopedia alone gives you vastly more material. And if you're already an experienced old school dungeon master, you probably don't need the 48 cards explaining how D&D works. But that's not really a fair way to judge this box, because this wasn't designed for us now. It was designed for us then. It was designed for the kids standing in a comic book store wondering, how do I actually play this thing? And viewed from that perspective, I think that's fantastic. I mean, the dragon cards are probably the standout feature. The gradual introduction of the rules is excellent. And Zanzar's Dungeon gives the new dungeon master something concrete to run. The map and the cardboard figures, they make movement and dungeon exploration immediately understandable. The DM screen gives the person running the game that wonderful little feeling that this side of the table belongs to me. And the rules give you enough levels to actually grow attached to your characters before you're expected to graduate into something larger. Is it perfect? No. Some experienced players may find the teaching method a bit slow today. The board game-like presentation can make the game initially look more limited than what Dungeons & Dragons really is. And once you've learned how to play, a lot of the material in the box has accomplished its purpose. But that's exactly the point. This wasn't supposed to be your final Dungeons & Dragons product. It was supposed to teach you enough that you'd want the next one. And in my case, it actually worked. When I look at this box now, I don't just see a TSR product from 1991. I see Saturday Nights in Naples, Florida. I see Charlie playing with his fighter. Alan was our Presto. And Aaron, Julie, and yes, Cindy, still annoying as you are. But I also see the dice scattered across the table. Character sheets covered in eraser marks. Joke cola and pizza boxes everywhere. And I remember hearing arguments about what somebody's character could or couldn't do. Bad decisions. Lucky natural 20s. Unlucky natural 1s. Probably way too much junk food. Definitely way too much joke cola. And a teenage dungeon master who didn't really know what he was doing next, but was figuring it out. One Saturday night at a time. That's what makes this box special to me. Frank Mentzer's red box is legendary because of the way it taught an entire generation how to play Dungeons & Dragons. Follow that up with his expert set that showed those players that there was a world outside of the dungeon. But this black box belongs to another little generation of D&D players. Kids who walked into a comic book store in 1991, saw the red dragon, and wondered what was inside. Me? I was one of them. And somewhere along the way, while running Charles, Alan, and them, and yeah, that still annoying little sister through those dungeons, something happened. I stopped being the kid who owned a Dungeons & Dragons game and became the Dungeon Master. And more than 30 years later, I'm still sitting behind the screen. So, I say the damn thing worked. I mean, if you started with the black box, let me know down in the comments. Tell me about your first character. Tell me about your first Dungeon Master. And especially, tell me if you escaped from Zanzar's dungeon. And if your first D&D box was something else other than the black box, whether it was the red box, the Mode Basic, the Holmes, or AD&D, whatever it was, I wanted to hear about that too. Because sooner or later, every one of us had that first box, that first book, that first set of dice, and that first night where we realized that this game was going to be something more than just a game. So until next time, keep them dice rolling, and I'll see you at the table.